Good morning, fellow ruminators. Welcome back to another session, Rumination with Andrew. Thank you so much for joining as we are about to discuss a very important topical matter. And this morning, we are going to talk about the missed opportunity of Prime Minister Golding, former Prime Minister Golding, Prime Minister of Jamaica's opportunity to transform Jamaica, right? So that is Bruce Golding's, former Prime Minister of Jamaica, opportunity to or for transformation of Jamaica, right? He could have had a transformational prime ministership, but he seemed to have decided not to do so. And that is what happens, that men tend not to be brave and courageous as they ought to be. And they will, for the most part, become subservient to people whom they think can affect their rulership and their dominion. Something that we have to understand, that people tend more to listen to their superiors, and sometimes even when their superiors are wrong, they are afraid of saying that to them. And that is the mettle of the man. It determines whether that person is a leader or not a leader. And not only Bruce Golding, but we have all of the prime ministers, including Michael Manley, who during his second term in office, when he came back to office in 1989, decided that he would go full, he would just explore the neoliberal and the neocolonial philosophies that he opposed himself, right? And I was reading an article this morning in which a Haitian writer also was intimating the same or making the same point about Aristide, John Burton Aristide, that when he came to power in the 1991, thereabout, and just served for 6 months because the United States removed him from power, right? The United States and the core group, including Canada, yes, Canada and France removed him from office. That, when he came back on the wings of the military in 1994, he came back a new Aristide, and he embraced some of the same neoliberal institutions and some of the doctrines of the empire, of the US empire, that he, in his first term in 1991, thereabout, had rejected, right? And he had spoken stridently against, right? But he came back to office and he made a lot of compromises with these institutions. And when you are a leader, you can make compromises if it will be, helpful for your nation. But when you're talking about making big compromises, right, ones that are going to betray your people and common trust that you have, that the people have reposed in you as a leader, then something is wrong with that picture. Now, let's get into the weeds of the discussion because we've got to get this done as quickly as possible. And I am going to reference 2 of Martin Henry's articles in my dialogue with you today, right? So please bear that in mind. Let me pull up these articles on the screen so that you can see what I am saying, lest thou shalt say that this guy is lying, all right? So that I want you to be able to see what I am doing. So we have here the Jamaica Gleaner, and this is in focus, and this is Martin Henry. Martin Henry is now deceased and was one of Jamaica's really excellent journalists. I don't know if we have journalists down there anymore. I think that that tradition has died. We have people who write, but you don't even know what they're writing about, and they're not writing about pertinent issues, matters that should be important to the Jamaican people. Now, we have here golden opportunity for transformational leadership. So he's writing golden, right? I'm sure he was also playing on the words Golding's opportunity, but he said golden opportunity for transformational leadership. And this was written on September 27th, 2009. right? And that was just 2 years into the prime ministership of Bruce Golding, former Prime Minister of Jamaica. He says Bruce Golding has come with a great deal of baggage, ranging from his rumored weak performance at Mona to being the only Jamaican politician to have represented two garrison constituencies, one of which he built for himself in central St. Catherine. So there have been few better moments than now for the systemic transformation of Jamaican society and economy. In fact, I think there are only two comparable moments since independence, the independence moment itself and the onset of the Michael Manley administration of 1972 to 1980, both which we were badly blown. So both of which, he says, were badly blown. So these opportunities, even though we speak about Michael Manley's administration, we like to talk about it and we like to think that Michael Manley was a transformation leader. And he came up with some transformation ideas. We cannot knock the man, we have to give him his credit. And he challenged the global order. But what we have to understand is that Michael Manley was not consistent, right? Michael Manley was not a consistent leader. Again, because of what happened in the 70s, and who would not be scared based on what, based on the CIA's destabilization effort that was undertaken in Jamaica. Of course, Michael Manley, as a human being, would have been scared. He was just a mere human. And when you have these strong forces against you, then you have to rethink your position. And I'm sure that Michael Manley went to bed many nights rethinking his position. After he lost the election in 1980, and he started going around the world because he lectured in, at many, or well, I shouldn't say many, but several universities in the United States. I think then he started to become a new creature and seem to have been baptized in the neoliberal mindset, or at least that's what we saw when he came back to office in 1989. Now has some distinct advantages over then. So he's saying that now has some distinct advantages over then. So Martin Henry is suggesting that in 2009, Jamaica had some advantages that it could have used in its favor to move the economy along and or developmental goals along. But it seems like we also did not take advantage of these opportunities. We are in the midst of a globally challenging period such as has never been seen in 8 decades, such has not been seen, he says, in 8 decades. And the crisis is bursting with opportunities. So out of the crises or that global crisis, Martin Henry believed that we could have used those crises or the crisis to uplift the economy and to transform the Jamaican society. The euphoria of 1962 and 1972 is absent, which is a good thing. The population has the harsh experience of the mistakes made, the promises broken, and the hopes unrealized. And as far greater political maturity and moderation than any other time since independence. What we want now is bold transformational leadership, not the timorous technocratic plodding that the Bruce administration, the Bruce government has been up to, right? So it seems to me that from then, he realized that Bruce Golding was not going to be the transformation leader that he had described himself to be in 2007 when he came to office. There are a number of things in favor of the government. Despite the narrow margin in victory of September 3, 2007, that was when Bruce Golding won the election and was put into power, and the noisy antics of the opposition since then, the people are in no mood whatsoever for a change of administration. They have consistently reconfirmed their choice of leadership for now in the by-elections, which delivered widened margins of victory over 2007. The leader of the Jamaican Labour Party, now Prime Minister currently, read the narrow margin victory of 2007 as a call, indeed a cry from the people for political collaboration in the national interest. And that is what should have happened. Because of this narrow margin of victory, that was the time that the PNP and the JLP should have come together and tried to build the economy, right? Because it was a narrow margin in terms of victory, right, for the JLP, right? Remember now that was really, really a slim margin. And that was the time that they should have really united their efforts to build Jamaica, but they did not do that. Our fractious tribalistic politics, especially the bloody Manisiaga years, is the single biggest cause of our major national problems. Let me repeat that. Our fractious tribalistic politics, especially the bloody Manisiaga years, is the single biggest cause of our major national problems, right? This is what has held us back for so long. And I don't think at this juncture we will ever move on, unless there's a miracle or we have some transformational leadership, which I don't think that we will ever have. Bruce Golding walked away from that politics and, as founder leader of the National Democratic Movement, promised a new and different politics. He must not expect a better time than now, right? Now was the time that, now was the urgency, right? The urgency of now. And I don't think that Bruce Golding at the time recognized that time was working against him and the clock was ticking. The country is firmly wedged between a rock and a hard place, but has quietly chosen not to explode into civil unrest and disorder. While many other countries have had economic crisis, riots, and this is now during 2008, 2009, where we're having the global meltdown, we have only kept up our murderous ways in killing more than 1,500 citizens each year with no civil explosion. Because as I've said on this show, on this channel, that murders in Jamaica are the norm. And we do not really protest against murders. This is nothing, right? To kill your neighbor is nothing. To have over 1,000 people dying in Jamaica, right? At least since the 1990s, I would think. It's nothing. It is nothing to the Jamaican citizens. It is the order of the day. It has been normalized. And when you talk about the butchering of the people and the massacre, you have people who are suggesting that it's over the top, right? He's speaking, oh, what you're saying is over the top. Oh, over the top, because you have become desensitized and you are not aware of what is happening in that society, right? So you can talk your nonsense and think that over 1,000 people died, even if you had 200 people dying in that small country yearly, it would have been a lot. Imagine 1,000 people, over 1,000 people dying every year per annum. And that's nothing. That is not a form of ethnic cleansing to you. It is to me. It is to me. The country has quietly absorbed an increased gas tax, something which has not happened since the 1980s, the return to the International Monetary Fund, which at different moments could have excited protest, is widely lamented, but also quietly understood as a necessity forced upon us, not by the incompetence of the government, but by long-standing domestic problems exacerbated by the global economic crisis, right? So yes, so Jamaica's understood at the moment that we had to go back to the IMF, even though many people lamented that situation. But remember now that there was also a lot of propaganda that was spread in terms of the IMF being a new organization and they were more transformational and they were more democratic and they would listen to the prime minister, or the prime ministers and presidents of these various countries. They were the ones who determined, what type of policies they would want. The IMF would not dictate the policies that they should follow. All of that nonsense, was disseminated during that time. I remember that distinctly. And I knew that the IMF had not changed and could never change, will never change, right? That the IMF can never change because it is an arm of the US military-industrial complex. And that is not going to die until it dies, right? No empire dies until it dies. It's going to fight its way unto death, right? That is what it's going to do. It will fight its way until it dies. We know that. History tells us that. But the greatest asset which the government has for pushing deep transformative change is its leader, right? So Bruce Golding should have been the transformative leader, but he wasn't. Bruce Golding has come to the office of Prime Minister with a great deal of baggage, ranging from his rumored weak performance at Mona to being the only Jamaican politician to have represented 2 garrison constituencies, one of which he built for himself in central St. Catherine, and with the dawn of the current one caught in a painfully slow extradition process, which has to be the greatest embarrassment to the government since taking office, and the greatest challenge to its credibility, which that was what sent him out of office. And this was written in 2009. Martin Wright wrote this article in 2009, and we know that the Tivoli Gardens incursion happened in 2010, and Dudus was extradited also in the summer, I think, of 2010. Right? He was extradited to the United States to face charges of gun running and drug, trafficking. Golding's reputation for flip-flopping, because he is a flip-flopper, and we know him as that, and I think that Edward Seaver, even though Edward Seaver was not the best prime minister of Jamaica, but he intimated that Bruce Golding was no leader, and that he vacillated, and he was not a person who was able to make decisions that would last, decisions that would be wise, right? He had said that about Bruce Golding's leadership. And so far, I think that is true, because Bruce Golding he doesn't seem like he's any one person. It seems that Bruce can be 3 persons if he wants to be 3 persons or 4. He takes on any character that he deems necessary. Golding's reputation for flip-flopping is real, but has not seriously stuck or done him great damage, right? So Martin Henry is agreeing that he has a history of flip-flopping. His stint as construction minister in the Seaver administration or government, with responsibility for both housing and public works, contributed, by his own admission, to garrisonization and the deepening of political tribalization, out of which so many people have suffered and died, right? But his political accusers have no cleaner hands and are mostly sensibly quiet, right? And I like what Martin Henry has said, because we know that maybe there are the only few clean hands in politics in Jamaica. The politics is so corrupt that we know that there are just probably few clean hands in both administrations, whether PNP or JLP. They are mostly corrupt, and they have blood on their hands, a lot of blood on their hands, and a lot of account to render to God on the day of judgment. The country is somberly open to Golding's atonement through transformational leadership. The polls data, when all the analyses are over and done, are solidly indicating national support for Golding in the office of the Prime Minister, despite substantial dissatisfaction with the Golding at large, with the government rather, not with Golding, but with the government at large. So whilst they were dissatisfied with the government, they really supported Bruce Golding's administration. The feeling is widespread that under the circumstances and all things considered, Golding is the best man for the job. And we all believed that because we thought that he had come back as a transformed person, having some knowledge of what he did in history. We knew that his history was not clean, was tainted, but I think that I thought that upon reflection, Golding realized that he had to do something to rescue the country that he lived in. After all, he has family down there and he has grandchildren. I'm sure he was thinking about the future of his children and grandchildren and the country at large. But I don't know. I don't know what Golding was thinking or was not thinking. What Golding will do with that trust and confidence in the little time he has is the $561.4 billion question. And it's interesting that, Martin was written this, right? Martin wrote this article. Martin wrote this article in 2009, and he left office in 2010. How did Martin Henry know that he had a limited time, the little time that he had in office, right? But seems that this was a little bit prophetic, Henry, because he's saying that he has a little time, right? The confidence in the little time, right? That he put little in parenthesis, right? In the little time he has in office. The moment beckons the man to rise to the stature of a Franklin Delano Roosevelt or a Winston Churchill on a Jamaican scale of things, which he did not. He did not rise to that level because of unwise decisions that Golding made. Now, this is not only about Golding, because we understand that, many of our politicians have walked in the same shoes, right? That Golding walked in. They walked on the same path, the same road, the same route that Golding walked on. When you look, here Martin Henry is also referencing P.J. Patterson and Bruce Golding in an article that he wrote on June the 8th, 2014, titled, "Shall Patterson and Golding Lecture Us Now?" And he was talking about the fact that these, ex-prime ministers and politicians like to lecture Jamaican people as if they know what is best for us. When they're in office, the same things that they're advocating for are the things that they did not do, or perhaps sometimes that they voted against. So why are they lecturing? Why do they continue to lecture the Jamaican people? All of them, Siago is now deceased, right? But all of them tend to want to lecture, and then when they're in office, they do the opposite, or they turn a blind eye to the things that they should have really given attention to, the problems that they should have solved. There is additional personal reason to take on Patterson and Golding. They have been two prime ministers for whom I have had the greatest expectation that they would be both willing and able to break with the traditions of their respective parties, transform the crooked system of politics and governance they had inherited, and begin the construction of a better Jamaica. So he thought these two men, representative of the two different parties, political parties in Jamaica, the PNP and JLP respectively, he thought that they should have done better. He had had greater expectations from them, but they did not fulfill that expectation. Mr. Patterson, fresh in the office of Prime Minister, and I talked over the fence between Jamaica House and 280 Road while I served as a United Nations Development Program Project Officer working out of the office of the Prime Minister. Then there were the public columns. We discussed public sector modernization and citizens' charter, science and technology in development, and values and attitudes. But after 14 years in office, Mr. Patterson left the system at its core largely undisturbed in its brokenness and dysfunctionality. right? Dysfunctionality. Dysfunctionality. The system is broken. And I have been saying this for a long time on this channel, that our system in Jamaica is dysfunctional. It is broken, right? It is broken. And at this moment, I don't know if we can even try to repair it because it's irreparable. We have to transform it and we have to begin afresh. We have to begin our political system. We have to make it, we have to refashion it because it is broken. It has been used and abused and misused and yeah. And as a result of that, you know, like you have a shoe and you wear it for a long time and you send it to the shoemaker, he fixes it and, you know, you wear it again and it, you know, it gets worn and torn out. And then you send it back and the shoemaker say, well, can't help it this time. It's gone, it's finished. Throw it in the garbage. I think that is where we are at this juncture of our history, that our political system is broken beyond repair. And it has to be refashioned. It has to be remolded. And who is going to be that transformational leader, that transformative leader to do this? Who will be able to rise to that occasion and to transform that society that is broken? Because the society is broken. When you see that citizens are turning on children, young children, and massacring them, right, left, and center, butchering them, you know that our society is broken. You know that that society is sick, sick to the core. Now, Mr. Golding truncated his own vision and opportunities through his party-centered handling of the Coke Manor debacle and was hounded out of office and out of politics, right? Which we all know. I don't have to rehash the incidents and the events of that particular era, that particular time. Mr. Patterson has recently pronounced on his pet subject of attitudes and values, which for him is a subject of absolute importance and for the nation a matter of life and death, right? According to Mr. Patterson, the whole matter of values and attitudes is a matter of life and death. And I think that society is dead because right now I do not know if Jamaica has any values and attitudes. Society is just at the lowest ebb. He's warning us that we are on the extreme edge of the precipice, right? We are just, and this was given in 2014, we are on the extreme edge of the precipice, right? We are on the extreme, not on the edge of the precipice, no, on the extreme edge of the precipice. The headline under which a newspaper carried the text of his speech to the Rotary Club of Spanish Town nearly a full week after its delivery. Mr. Golding has been advising on the role of the church, bank charges, the state of the NHD, the electricity issue, and the homosexual issue in recent pronouncements. If we are indeed at the extreme edge of the precipice of moral and societal decay, social decay he has here, Mr. Patterson has helped to deliver us there, right? Listen to what Martin Henry is saying. If we are indeed, which we are, if we are indeed at the extreme edge of a precipice of moral and social decay, Mr. Patterson has helped to deliver us there, right? Yeah, because man have enough phone and enough gap, right? That's what Mr. Patterson said. Mr. Patterson did not, in his years in office, how many years did he spend in office? right? 3 terms in office he had. And he did not seize the opportunity to transform the socio-economic conditions in Jamaica, right? Now, this guy is a QC or KC, Queen's Counsel, King's Counsel. And, you know, one of the things that is so phony about the Jamaican society is that, oh, what is brilliant. You know, they have KCs and QCs and they have all of these titles. And when they are put to the task, they can't even manage a chicken coop. Not even a chicken coop, or people can manage. Because everything down there is dysfunctional. I was talking to somebody, by the way, the other day, and she was so belligerent that she was telling me that, yeah, some things have improved. And I asked her the question, give me one ministry that you can itemize, that you say, I'm not saying now it has to be excellent, but it is operating normally, right? She could not itemize not even one, and she lives there. Water, that's a catastrophe. Electricity, another catastrophe. Housing, a crisis, right? Education, I'm not even sure what to say. Chronic state of affairs. We can't itemize one ministry that we can say, well, we can say that we can give this a C. That is even a C. Even a C, we should be able to give water or housing, education, and we cannot give that grade to any of these ministries. So what sort of nation are we actually trying to build? That is the question. And I think we are the problem for the most part, because we will not come to grips. We will not face the reality. We want to say things have improved when we know the fact that things have not improved. And then we look at persons like myself as being pessimistic. Oh, this guy is talking pessimism. Or you think that the United States is going to go down there and change things. So you listen to the, what's his name? The Ratagons and the people who think that the United States is going to be joined down there. I did a video yesterday in which I told you that the Canadians are now also militarizing the region, and that Jamaica is Canada's military hub, right? Jamaica is Canada's military hub. Fast forward 20 years since the 1994 launch of Patterson's Values and Attitudes campaign, today this ex-prime minister says, and I quote, he's quoting from Mr. Patterson, Mr. P.J. Patterson, that is. And for those of you who don't know, Mr. P.J. Patterson was a former prime minister of Jamaica. I think he was there from 1992 or 1993 to 2005 when he resigned from politics. There is a growing sense of alienation and greater distrust of leadership in politics, in our legal system, our national institutions, corporate business, the church. We are at the extreme edge of the precipice. The statistics are irrefutable and all the point in the wrong direction, and all point rather in the wrong direction. We're heading in the wrong direction. Right? Headed in the wrong direction. And do you know that this speech was actually made in 2014 when the IMF program was there, had just started the IMF program, and Jamaica was going to be, you know, lifted off the ground, right? The IMF and the World Bank were there to transform Jamaica's economy and to lift us off the ground, because our macroeconomics were going to be one of the best that the world has ever seen. And we were the poster child for the IMF and their policies, right? A slave society, because we like to be slaves, right? And what is the purpose of the University of the West in this? You know, because they're mum on things. Nothing is being said. They're just there, and they have their conferences, and I don't know if their conferences are relevant to the issues that are afflicting modern Jamaica. Right? Everything is about gendered issues and gender equality and all of the nonsense that they talk in academia. And I'm not suggesting here that genders should not be equal. What I'm suggesting is that you can expect when you go to any conference now in academia, particularly on the left, the same things are said. And I've been to several of the conferences and they're boring. Because people are not attacking real life issues. They are just caught in the midst of theory, some man-made theory, and pretending to be intellectuals. Right? And they have absolutely no solutions to solving the problems of the modern world. And Jamaica is following in that same tradition of just repeating everything ad nauseum that comes from North America. And that education system in North America is sick too. Look at what the students are doing at Columbia and Yale and all these institutions. And many of them don't have a clue that both sides of the aisle are controlled. The Palestinians and the Israelis are controlled by the same people. By the same people. What we have to do is to look at what is happening and try to come to an understanding of the truth, rather than saying that this side is right and that side is wrong. Because the world is not like that. Because our world is controlled by a minority. Right? And the minority of which I reference are sick people. Right? Are mentally ill people. But we respect them because they have lots of money. And they have titles to back up that money, some of them. On February 25, 1999, I wrote, and he's re-quoting himself, that's Martin Henry. The substance of the column, which I wrote the week after the National Constitution on Values and Attitudes in February 1994, bears repeating now, exactly 5 years later, and 5 years no better off. While the consultation was a useful starting point, a valuable initiative for mobilization, the government will not achieve practical results by preaching change or by abdication, relying upon other sectors to carry the initiative. And that is what happens. The government tends to want to put the blame on the other. It's not my responsibility. It's not my responsibility to protect our children in the schools. It's the teacher's responsibility. The teachers must teach them values of anger management, when our own politicians and the people in society at large cannot manage their anger. Right? But the teachers must teach them, and the principals must transform the schools when we have a sick society and the children are exposed to that level of anger and social anarchy that exists in our country. But it's the teachers who should protect the children. That society is sick. I'm not going to lie to you. That society is sick and is confused. The government must decisively use what it controls to achieve the overt behavioral results it wants. And the government has the laws. They are the ones who create laws. And they should be the ones to also enforce the laws, that the laws are strictly adhered to. But in Jamaica, it's a lawless society. The state controls the legal framework, Martin is suggesting here. It controls what is loosely called the political culture, and it controls the public service. These are Patterson's levers for decisively influencing values and attitudes. What would happen if a bold government should forcefully apply the road traffic laws, the light noise law, and generally the enjoyment of property laws, the indecency laws, and so on along the line? He's asking that very important question. This simple act of applying the many laws governing social interaction would be like a tonic for values and attitudes. Listen to what he's saying here again. We're going to end here. Prime Minister Patterson is not a preacher or a moral philosopher. all right, or teacher, or journalist, or creative artist, or entertainer. He is a politician trained in law. I loved it. I love this expression by Henry, that P.J. Patterson is a politician primarily. He is a politician primarily, trained in law, and that's the difference. He's not a lawyer, because he never practiced these years for the most part. He is a politician trained in law who currently heads the government of Jamaica. Right? It is the tools of politics and government which are in his hands for leading a revolution in values and attitudes. A wise man should use what he has to get what he wants. Right? But we can see that these two prime ministers who are still alive, Bruce Golding, former Prime Minister of Jamaica, and P.J. Patterson, another Prime Minister of Jamaica. And by the way, P.J. Patterson was Prime Minister from 1993 or 1992, because when Michael Mann demitted office in 92, he became the Prime Minister, and then he won his legitimate term in 1993. So he was Prime Minister from 1992 to 2005, but he was in politics from 1969, right? So he has served the Jamaican people from 1969 to 2005 or 2006, I think, when he demitted office. I think he demitted office in 2006. I think Mr. Siaga was the one who demitted office in 2005, right? So yes, so Mr. Patterson, my correction, demitted office. He resigned from Parliament in 2006, right? Having been Prime Minister from 1992 to 2005. Those were what, 13 years? 13 solid years in which he could have helped. I'm not saying that he could have transformed everything, because that would be foolhardy to think that way. But he could have instituted. And Mr. Patterson also came with a heavy mandate, because people saw him as the first, Afro-looking Jamaican to have been Prime Minister, right? He was a fresh Prince of Bel-Air, right? Right? He was the man from the yard, right? That he was the authentic Jamaican, whatever that means, right? But he came and he behaved similarly to any of the previous prime ministers, because at the end of the day, he was and remains a politician, right? And as we often say, it is politricks, right? The politics is there to trick you. Incidentally, somebody in a comment section of a video that I watched online, said, broke down the expression government, the word government, which is government. And govern, it means, according to her, to control, which I think, yeah, that to control, and she has meant the mind, right? So they're there to control your minds, right? Government. Is that what it's there to do? Is that what we have placed them in office to do, to control our minds? But if you're watching what is happening, particularly over the last, 10 years or so, we can say that they're indeed controlling our minds, and that they have effectively controlled our minds, but people continue to be excited about them. While they're necessary, because governments are necessary, we should hold them to account, and we should stop worshiping them, because they are ordinary human beings like you and I, and they will betray, right? Humans will betray, right? Human beings will betray. Even your very spouse and child can betray common trust, right? So I just wanted to share with you some thoughts on these two former prime ministers of Jamaica who are still alive and who need themselves to do some reflection, because they have contributed to the harsh realities that we see currently unfolding in that country of Marcus Garvey called Jamaica. Thank you so much for joining. Hope to see you in another video as we continue to elaborate on matters of importance. Continue to like, to share, and to subscribe so that we can expand and we can build our community of ruminators and we can educate and enlighten populations around the world. Thank you so much. All the best. Bye.